Welcome to the Metals 100 coverage for the PDAC 2024 here in Toronto, Canada. And we have Horizon Copper with us here today. How are you doing, Craig?
Very good. Thanks for having us.
Yes, maybe you can start off just giving us a brief intro overview about your company.
For sure. So Horizon Copper is a relatively new company in the copper space. We were created about 18 months ago as a transaction with Sandstorm Gold, which has been around for the last 10 to 15 years as a mid-tier precious metals streaming company. And they had a handful of copper-focused assets within their portfolio, which they spun out and created this new vehicle, Horizon Copper, which is a TSXV listed company listed here in Canada. And the idea is to have these passive interests in copper assets, which we'll add to and grow over the next number of years.
Sure, let's talk more details about each of the assets in your portfolio. The first one being Antamina Copper Mine here in Peru. I believe you're already generating cash flows already. So what sort of the timeline, what sort of development, how is this coming along?
Sure, so Antamina, it's the third biggest copper mine in the world on a copper equivalent basis. It's owned by Teck, Glencore, BHP and Mitsubishi. And we own a 1.66% net profit interest in that operation. So it effectively acts a little bit like a royalty, and we get a quarterly check effectively on reference to production and results from the Antamina mine. Antamina was permitted up until 2028, until just recently, and then within the last couple of weeks, they just announced an extension to their mine life to 2036, and some of the permitted infrastructure as part of that expansion will take the mine life beyond 2036. So it's a multi-decade mine life, which is currently cash flowing for us. At current copper prices, we're generating roughly $10 to $15 million of cash flow to Horizon, net of our expenses that we pay back to Sandstorm. And with increases in copper prices and increases in throughput over the next number of years, we can see that number growing, and we'll generate lots of cash flow for many decades to come on that asset.
That's a good foundation for your company. So let's talk about the second one, the Hot Maden project in Turkey. How's the development so far for that project?
Yeah, so Hot Maden is like a joint venture. Historically, it was owned 70% by a company called Lydia, which is a Turkish private company, and ourselves 30%. Last year in May, SSR Mining came in and acquired an interest of initially 10% to grow up 40% from Lydia. So that would end up being 40% SSR, 30% Lydia, and then 30% for Horizon, with SSR being the operator. The kind of early works development activities being ongoing over the last couple of years. And SSR's stated ambition was to make a construction decision in 2024 with commercial production following in 2027. Now, you may have seen in the news in the last couple of weeks, SSR had an incident at one of their other Turkish mines, Çöpler, which has had a knock-on impact in terms of where they're going to be allocating capital and attention over the next number of years. So they've said that they're going to suspend further investment into Hot Maden for the time being until they've dealt with the issue at Çöpler. So those timelines of 2024 and 2027 may get pushed out by a year or so. But what doesn't change is the fact that Hot Maden is a world-class asset, gold, copper, very high grade, and it'll get into production at some point in the next number of years. And as and when it does, will generate lots of cash flow to Horizon.
Good to know. You also had some involvement with the Oyu Tolgoi, which is one of the biggest copper mine in Mongolia. So what's the timeline there in terms of that project?
Yeah, so Oyu Tolgoi, as you know, it's one of the biggest copper mines in the world as well. The main Oyu Tolgoi mine that's been in operation for the last number of years, owned by Rio Tinto and the government of Mongolia. And then as they've moved out away from that main ore body into this expansion ground, that's subject to a joint venture between a company called Entrée Resources and Rio Tinto. Entrée owns a 20% joint venture interest in that expansion ground, and we own a 25% equity interest in Entrée. So through that 25% equity interest, we have exposure to this expansion on the underground at Oyu Tolgoi. That part of the property is currently in development, and they've recently announced that that will expect to be in production by 2027 or thereabouts, with cash flows following thereafter. So it's a slightly longer dated asset for us, but again, this is an asset that will generate cash flows for many decades, lots of optionality going out into the future, and will be very valuable to Horizon shareholders.
Sure. And currently you have 3 assets in the portfolio. Are you still working on any new asset possible to adding into your portfolio?
Yeah, so the fortunate thing we have with our relationship with Sandstorm, who are a 34% shareholder, they also work closely with us, and we work closely with their corporate development team. So we see many different opportunities come across our desks every month, every year. And so we're constantly evaluating potential new opportunities to invest into. And the idea would be to grow this portfolio of copper interests, ideally with further passive interests in great operations like we've got today with Antamina, Oyu Tolgoi, and not Maden. And the role of Sandstorm could be as a funding partner, whereby they provide a precious metal stream on the precious metal component of those operations to help us acquire them. So it's a symbiotic relationship we've got with Sandstorm that helps us evaluate new projects, and we get to see a lot of different opportunities, and we've been working our way through those over the last number of months.
Good to hear. So the final question I want to throw at you is, of course, Horizon is focused on copper. So what's your thoughts on how's the copper market in general, mid to long term?
Yeah, so I think there's been lots of talk about copper over the last number of years and the need for copper as the world moves towards electrification. Is copper going to go up this year or next? I don't know, but what I think we can say is that you can see the demand for copper increasing over the next 5 to 10 years as the world needs more copper to move towards electrification as a source of energy. And then you look at the supply, and lots of mines are coming towards the end of their mine lives. Newer mines are taking longer to come on stream, and so the supply gap is going to start to grow within the next number of years. And to us, that means there has to be a positive outlook for the price of copper. And as and when that comes through, we'll benefit greatly based on our existing portfolio and hopefully with new assets acquired in the meantime.
So thank you for sharing your story with us, Craig, today.
That's a pleasure. Thanks very much.
Time.
Cheers.